Hi everyone, welcome to the MrpTech podcast. This is episode 184. My name is Matt, and this is the weekly podcast discussing everyday tech for everyday people. This week, I have been experimenting with something that I haven't really done a whole lot with over the last year or so. About a week ago, we celebrated like the 1 year sort of, anniversary or celebration. 1 year ago, we actually, at our school, contacted the International Space Station. And if you were listening to the show back then, it was a pretty big deal for me because it took well over a year and a half worth of preparation for this event. And the deadline, the actual date of the event kept getting changed over and over and over for months due to the schedule on the International Space Station. And finally, it made it happen. And it was one of the coolest experiences as a educator, as a amateur radio enthusiast, as a technology enthusiast, and as a music teacher. It really just went down the list and checked off a whole lot of boxes of what I wanted to do. And I'm going to show you a real quick clip of that. And just to show you, if you haven't seen it, you can find this on the MrpTech YouTube channel. But this is the final seconds leading up to the International Space Station.
Okay, we've got a few seconds before the space station arrives. And the moment it does, then I'll open the squelch on this radio and I will call him.
Watch your ears.
So just stand by. And hopefully the wind will stay calm, which it is at the moment. The antenna is in position, and here we go. Please stand by. Oscar Romeo 4 ISS, Oscar Romeo 4 ISS, Oscar Romeo 4 ISS. This is Victor Kilo 6, Mike Juliet in Perth, calling for a scheduled contact. Do you copy? Over. Oscar Romeo 4 ISS, Oscar Romeo 4 ISS. This is Victor Kilo 6, Mike Juliet in Perth, calling for a scheduled contact. Do you copy? Over.
Victor Kilo 6, Mike Juliet. This is Oscar Romeo 4 ISS. I have you loud and clear.
And so that was the International Space Station returning the call. And from that point on, we had a list of students who went through and asked a bunch of questions. And it was really a highlight for me to see those students have the opportunity to sort of ask science questions or any other type of question in general that they may have been interested in. And so ever since then, my schedule has been kind of crazy, and the school year went by very quickly, and I wanted to get some students going in amateur radio in the second half of the school year. And then all of the issues with COVID-19 hit. And when that happened, everything was sort of flipped upside down. We had to reinvent the way we teach online with distance learning. And with all of that, I found myself not having a whole lot of time to do a lot of things. And priorities changed a little bit. And while I was home, rather than experimenting with technology stuff with the lack of drive time, I've got a 13-year-old dog at home who I wanted to spend a little bit more quality time with. So we've been enjoying all of the extra walks that we could get over the last few months, and really enjoying that as much as we could with the current situation. So going back about a week ago or so, I posted this in the Discord room. Speaking of all this, I haven't had an opportunity to really do much with amateur radio over the last year since the International Space Station contact. And it's not that I lost interest. It's not that I was bored with it. I still attend the local amateur radio club meetings. We're actually doing them online now. And with all of that, the interest was still there. But I just never found myself. I would always bring my radio hiking with me. And so today's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about my return to amateur radio over the last week or so and how that came to be. Now, if you are a member of the Discord chat room, which I invite anybody who's listening to join our Discord room, you saw me post this video about at least a week ago. And this video is of someone who is parachuting out of an airplane and working a radio after their parachute deploys to try to make as many contacts as they can in their descent. And I'm going to just kind of play a quick video here, and this is after several attempts to try to clear the airwaves. There was lots of conversations happening. The guy who was parachuting is calling out, and he gets a response.
KD9, Oil and Mobile, Parachute Mobile. KD9, Oil and calling CQ on 2 meters. CQ, CQ, CQ.
Squad Delta Zero, Golf Victor.
Who the heck is that?
Kilo Delta Niner, Oscar Lima November. Parachute Mobile, Parachute Mobile. Kilo Delta Niner, Oscar Lima November.
You're on a parachute? I hear.
Hey, this is WE5MAG.
And so that's the response he got back. Now, that video is available on YouTube. It was posted in some amateur radio social media pages, and the video is pretty amazing because he's recording the audio directly on the radio, and then afterwards he went and put his audio from his GoPro together and edited the video. And it's kind of funny to hear the reactions from everybody who's using the radio. Now, here's the thing. This video had nothing to do with me, of course, because you wouldn't catch me jumping out of an airplane, that's for sure. But this video kind of inspired me to get going again in amateur radio. Now, as I mentioned a few minutes earlier, one of the great things about amateur radio is that if you're a hiker, it may end up being an extra safety precaution, may save your life someday with that extra range if you're not in cell phone service or something like that. So every time I go hiking, I carry my radio with me just in case something happens, because I would hike with friends, I hike alone, so you never know, or I may stumble across somebody who needs help. So that having an amateur radio license is something that I suggest if you're interested in technology, you look into. Because I had no interest, I didn't know anything about amateur radio until I sort of got into Linux, and I started seeing how other Linux people were big fans of amateur radio, and I didn't really see any correlations at first. And in the past episodes of this podcast, I've talked about the communities of both Linux and ham radio operators, how these communities get together, they help each other out, there's community service involved, and amateur radio is, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it, but it's a community of people who are enthusiasts about radios. They learn about radios, they learn how to use them, and then what they do is they use those services in their community for emergency preparedness. They help local communities, say there's a huge marathon or a bike race or something like that, covering vast distances. The radios, amateur radio licenses that cover amateur radio frequencies are usually allow for higher power radios, so you can cover distances, vast distances, compared to, say, a walkie-talkie that's not going to give you very much of distance at all. So there are benefits of it, and this is sort of my story about getting back into. I saw this video of the parachuter. It's also the 1 year of the contact with the International Space Station, and I wanted to get back into amateur radio. So my original goal was to start climbing some mountains and basically use my radio on the tops of mountains to see what sort of contacts I could make. And I haven't quite done that yet. I've been sort of preoccupied with a few other things over the last week or so. But there's so many different types of contests out there that you can do there's pretty much something for everyone, whether you're a parachuter, you're a hiker, or you are somebody who really likes to just experiment with electronics, that type of thing. So basically what I'm doing is telling you that no matter who you are, there's probably an interest in amateur radio, and there's something that you can do in amateur radio that I suggest you look into it if you haven't before. So there's a couple of different things I want to show you if you're looking into like what you can do. There are very basic radios that you can get. Again, you need a license in order to operate these radios. Kenwood is a popular brand. They offer, bare bones minimum radios, relatively inexpensive, all the way up to the professional lines. Most of the amateur radio operators that I've talked to prefer one of three brands: Kenwood, ICOM, or Yaesu. And I'll put these links in the show notes. There are different types of radios you can get depending on what it is you want to do and your license class. But most radios, for very beginners, are going to be VHF, UHF radios, and they are something that you can put in your car or you can carry with you hiking. You can have a mobile radio or you can have a handheld radio. And again, there are basic models that start off that are relatively inexpensive, up to the very souped up models that have basically everything that you're going to use and more. The very basic models are just single band radios, meaning they're only going to monitor one frequency at a time. The more advanced radios are dual band radios, and they can monitor more than one frequency at a time, different bands, different operating powers, that type of thing. I personally tend to like Yaesu radios the most, and I'll tell you why. The radios here on Yaesu, especially this FTM 400 XDR radio, it's been out for a few years. It's an updated model, but this doesn't look like something, let's say, from the 90s. It's got a very up-to-date touchscreen interface, very easy to use, very easy to program, and these radios oftentimes will come with something called APRS installed. APRS is the automatic packet reporting system, which allows messages to be sent back and forth between radios. It also, in like when it comes to community service or emergency radio use, you can set up a sort of a beacon that will beacon out your location or certain messages, and you can contact. It'll show you where other ham radio operators who are broadcasting their beacons are at the current time. Really great for races. If you're trying to figure out where a emergency vehicle is, like let's say there's an injured biker and they are in a van being brought back to the med tent, and they want to know how far out that van is. Well, APRS would help broadcast that location. So I'm going to show you a map of just an area that I picked, and you can go anywhere in the country, and you can see where these amateur radio operators are beaconing out within the last hour or so. You really, as you zoom out, you can see there are lots of different operators all over the place, really all over the country. You zoom way out, and they're pretty much everywhere. There are a few blank spots here and there across the country, but not everybody is beaconing out all the time. Usually it's when you're on the road or that type of thing. But it's very handy to use the APRS system, and a lot of these radios now have APRS built in, along with some digital radio functions as well. So I'm looking into radios, and if you see kind of on the desk behind me, this past week, and please, you're looking behind me and you're seeing two antennas set up. Those antennas are not set up for use. They're just sort of spaced out. I took the mobile radio out of my car, and I had a power supply sitting around, and I hooked it up for a little bit. But you also see there's a CB radio back there as well. And so the top radio is the Alinco D35 that was given to me when I first started amateur radio. It was given to me by a friend of mine. It's gotten a lot of use. And then right underneath it was a brand new CB radio that was found in a yard sale. It was given to me. They bought it for $3 and give it to me. When I looked it up, the brand new cost of this radio is $120. So basically, the radio that I had in my car for a long time was really hard to program. It was really hard to use while driving. It was hard to program in repeaters on the fly, that type of thing. So I really didn't use it a whole lot. And so now I'm getting into radio a little bit more, and I'm starting to learn and trying to figure out, what are these hobby aspects of amateur radio that I really want to get into. And APRS is one of them. I want to learn a little bit more about that. And I'm not one to broadcast my location all the time, but I think, on long road trips, finding other hams on the road, just to have that hobby of meeting new people and communicating is kind of a fun thing. And I want to get into a little bit of digital modes. The radio that I was just showing you comes with System Fusion and allows for all sorts of different implementations, especially of the digital modes put out by Yaesu. I don't know a whole lot about digital modes in digital communication, but basically, if you heard that static earlier, basically digital modes will clean up your audio and allow for transmitting and connecting to the internet and broadcasting all over the world to various different channels. So the really, the amateur radio of old days is changing, and you still have all the capabilities that you had back then, whether it's a simplex communication where you're communicating from radio to radio, or you're communicating radio to repeaters that broadcast your signal, retransmit your signal out in the open for other hams to hear. Or if you're now doing digital modes on, say, a Raspberry Pi, or you have a digital radio, there's lots of different types of digital modes out there, and I'm far too inexperienced with them to even begin to tell you about them. But there's a lot of things out there for enthusiasts, and I think that anybody interested in technology, and I know there's a few Discord users that are interested in getting their ham radio license. It really is a whole lot of fun, and at the same time, you're always learning something new. And one of the things that I have been that's been sort of making me procrastinate on things lately is I wasn't sure which direction I wanted to go with a lot of things in this podcast and this show. And I've got lots of ideas, and it's a matter of sitting down and coming up with ideas and figuring out which ones are going to work for me. So I mentioned Linux from scratch a few weeks ago, something that's interesting to me, but I really just don't want to sit down in front of a computer for hours and hours and hours after teaching all day. And I get eye strain looking at computers. So working with something like Linux from scratch is something I just keep tabling. And, then I saw that parachute video, and I got inspired to get back into radio again. And I think this is the right decision. And so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to get the radio back in my car, get everything set up again. And a lot of radios now are very easy to program. They are, you use different programming software. Some of it's free, some of it's not free. You use software like Chirp or ADMS to program radios, and makes it a whole lot easier. And then a lot of the more modern radios that have been coming out over the last 5 to 6 years, they're easier to program in your vehicle. You don't have to hold down 4 or 5 different buttons and do funny things with the radio in order to program in a repeater. Now it's just, especially the touchscreen ones, very, very easy to set up something within seconds. And, most states in the United States, they have exceptions for amateur radio operators using and talking on mobile radio while driving because it is considered an emergency service. So that is something that to keep in mind. Just check your local state regulations as far as amateur radio operation is concerned. And you can have lots of fun, whether you're on top of a mountain, whether you're in your boat or you're operating from a boat, or there's even a guy that, and I mentioned this a while back, that there's a guy from Scotland, I believe, who connects to a repeater in England, and he rides his bike every day, and he's talking while riding his bike, but that repeater is connected to IRLP, which is Internet Relay Protocol, and basically he's talking to people in the United States while he's out on a bike ride. I mean, that's pretty cool when you think about it. And so with all these features, all these different types of radios out there, if you are interested in amateur radio or you want to learn a little bit more about it, send me an email, mrptechreviews@gmail.com. Love to talk to you a little bit about it. I'm going to start experimenting a little bit more, and I may or may not bring it up on the show. It all depends on how I feel during that particular time. But definitely it's fun to see something that inspires you and then makes you want to go and do it more. That parachute video did that for me, and I'll put that link in the show notes. There's actually 2 of them, and I'll share that with all of you. So make sure to watch that video. It's pretty cool, especially the one that I just played. I'll put that one in the show notes first, even though it's the second video, just because the reactions are great from all the people listening on the radio. Okay, so last thing before we end the show today, I have to say this every time towards the end of June. I have to say this a lot, okay? So it's the end of June, which means I'm switching from my career job to my summer employment, and I never know what exactly that's going to bring. This year, if you don't know, I work at a tourist attraction. It's a 2-mile-long canyon that has hiking trails and various activities such as rafting and via ferrata courses, which is basically like rock climbing courses. And I'm a supervisor there, but it's nothing special. As far as my job is concerned, what I really like to do is interact with people who are coming to basically my hometown. Usually we get people from all over the world coming to visit. And usually in the summertime, we're wicked slammed, and it's exhausting work. It's fun, but it's exhausting. And so this year, I have no idea what to expect because the Canadian border is closed. There's almost no tourism, so we're going to get a lot of local interactions, I believe, this summer. And so I don't know if it's going to be like wicked crazy busy, or if it's going to be busy, or if it's going to be dead slow. So it's hard to say up in the air. So again, as we get into the summer months, I may miss a week or 2 here or there, depending on how the season is going. But I'm still keeping up with these podcasts, and I still want to keep putting out content. And the best thing that you could do is, if you have a topic that you're interested in, that you want me to talk about, you send me an email, like I said, mrptechreviews@gmail.com, and ask questions. Bring up show topics. If you have a question on a show you've previously seen, I'd love to hear from you, and I love the interaction between my listeners. So and the show. So I would usually I try to get back very quickly. If you have a question, an email. And sometimes I bring it up on the show, sometimes not, but I definitely appreciate any feedback that you can give. And if you are an amateur radio operator and you want to ask questions, or if you want to ask a little bit about what I do, feel free to do that. I know there's a few in the Discord room that have been in sort of amateur radio about as long as I have, some longer, some less. And it's fun to have that opportunity. Also in the Discord chat, we talk audiobooks, we talk just everyday general chat. We're getting to know a lot of people in that chat I consider good friends at this point in time, because we've been hanging out for a few years now, from all over the world. And it's a pretty laid back and relaxed place, unlike social media where everything has been blowing up lately. I'll leave that to your opinion and whatever you think, as I don't discuss politics on the show. But the Discord room is lots of fun. Along with the audio books, people are posting interesting links. We have a sort of Podnuts lug where anybody can talk about Linux topics on there as well. So anybody is welcome. And how you're going to find that, you go to my website, mrptechreviews.com. Just scroll down just a little bit. You'll see the Discord button. That's where you're going to, it'll bring you right into the Discord room. And basically it's very easy to sign up, and it's free. So you're always welcome to join us. And we have people from all over the world. So even if you're in the United States, people from all over the world are usually posting in late hours of the night. It's not late hours for them, but usually there's all sorts of really great people involved. And the more we get there, the more fun it will be. So always great to see new people. So encourage you to join the MRP Tech Podcast Discord. All right, that's going to do it for this week. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.